Hello, I'm Robert T. Smith, host of Support Your Local Podcast. I want to take a moment to remind you to hit that fast forward button. That is, unless you want to hear about something good being done. Anyone who knows me knows that I love bowling. In 2016, I founded the Smith Family Bowling Scholarship Foundation, intended to honor my father's hard work and dedication to community service and award scholarships to youth bowlers throughout the nation. To date, we've awarded well over $15,000 in scholarships. If you are a bowler, know a bowler, have ever seen a bowler, or heard about anyone who has ever seen a video of a bowler, I'd love for you to help promote the SFBSF and its mission. Please go to sfbsf.com and see what we're all about. While you're there, please consider hitting that donate button and helping us make a brighter future for our youth. Again, that's sfbsf.com. Thank you for your time.
And this episode is brought to you by Dye Real Estate and Land Company. They are the real estate agents based in Northwest Ohio that are the go-to company for people who enjoy the rural lifestyle and are looking to buy and sell some property. The whole team is amazing. I've used them in the past. I'm partial to Jaylene myself for obvious reasons, but they're all there for you whenever you need them. If you're in the market, just drop them a line at info@dyerealestate.com. That's info@dyerealestate.com. And don't forget to tell them Support Your Local Podcast sent you.
I now declare the quick draw competition open.
Howdy, everyone. Pull up a chair, kick up your boots, and take a sip on a nice cold brew. It's The Quick and the Pod, the Season 2 episodes of the Support Your Local Podcast show, where we take a look at the 1995 Sam Raimi Western classic, The Quick and the Dead, one chapter at a time. I am your host, as always, Robert Smith, coming to you from beautiful Tombstone. Yes, that one. Today we're going to take a look at Chapter 16, Clay Cantrell. I wonder who this is going to be. But before we do, we're going to, as always, just take a moment and do a bit of a deep dive into one of the cast and crew, one of the movers and shakers, one of the actors that made this movie possible. And if our chapter heading is any clue, today is the day we are going to take a look at one Mr. Keith David in a segment that I like to call, Put My Damn Name Up on the Board.
Put my damn name up.
All right, Mr. Keith David, playing Clay Cantrell in the movie. Hopefully, I've spelled it correctly in my script. We'll see. But definitely one of that guys in regards to the cast and crew. Maybe not as big of a hitter as some of our other ones, but definitely one of the ones where if you've not seen him in another movie, you've probably definitely heard him, as we'll get into here. But first big hit was 1982's The Thing, John Carpenter's version, playing Childs. 1988, he was in Braddock, Missing in Action 3. He was also in They Live as Frank, and that's probably where I first would have ran into him. So the iconic John Carpenter, so obviously a carryover from The Thing, but John Carpenter's They Live, the movie that, if you're not familiar, is the Rowdy Piper vehicle where he is a drifter that stumbles upon a pair of sunglasses that lets him see the alien conspiracy that's going around through the world. It lets him see that we've actually been invaded, that they've taken over, and that they are using subliminal messages in order to keep us at bay. Frank was the co-star. So Keith David playing Frank, I should say, was the co-star, and is a part of what is easily one of the most epic fight scenes in cinema history, to the point that Family Guy has spoofed it with their Peter Griffin versus the Giant Chicken numerous times. But it's probably best known for one of the few fight scenes in cinema history, I think, that actually has repeated nut shots as part of the gimmick. So props to Roddy Piper for bringing some of his WWE moves onto the big screen. I'm sure that's what John Carpenter was looking for when he had cast him for that. 1989, Roadhouse. 1990, Men at Work. 95 is where we find him as Sergeant Cantrell in The Quick and the Dead. 1996, he is one of the voices in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Disney animated film. 1997, Volcano Police, and also the voice of Apollo in Hercules. 1998, he is in Armageddon, and There's Something About Mary. So as I said, guys, like you've seen him in things before, I promise you. 2000, he is in Pitch Black, the Vin Diesel Riddick series. He's also in Requiem for a Dream, Where the Heart Is, and The Replacements. 2001, he is a voice in Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within. Not a good Final Fantasy movie, but I would argue is a decent movie if you just take the words Final Fantasy out of it. 2002, the other big one that I know him from, Barbershop, where he plays Lester Wallace, the gangster that is trying to take over the barbershop from Ice Cube. This is where, like I said, if you don't know him, like, he is very, very, very good at playing a menacing character. He's obviously memorable visually and I mean no disrespect by this, but it's a trait of his, the slight gap between his two front teeth, so that when he talks, it's pronounced almost. It looks almost snake-like, like you would see like Jafar in the Aladdin cartoons. It's just perfect where you'd have like the snake tongue coming out. I can visualize that with him. So definitely a very memorable face. 2003, Agent Cody Banks. 2004, Agent Cody Banks 2, and The Chronicles of Riddick, and the voice of the direct-to-video Chronicles of Riddick, Dark Fury. So obviously somebody that is good enough to stay in the franchises that he is a part of, and we'll see that the whole voice side of things is really going to take off. 2006, I have this on here because it caught my interest. He plays Coach Popovich in the OOH in Ohio. And coming from where I come from, I have no idea what this movie is. I had never heard of it. I need to look it up. But the fact that there is a movie called The O in Ohio, and it has one Mr. Keith David in it, definitely I'm going to check it out. 2007, Delta Farce, the movie that was so horribly overlooked in an Oscar snub for one Mr. Larry the Cable Guy. 2009, he's the cat voice in Coraline. He's also in The Princess and the Frog. 2012, he's in Cloud Atlas. And really, when I looked at his IMDb, he has over 300 credits. So definitely not one of the people that I'm going to go piece by piece with on his filmography, but it means that he has been consistently working literally as long as I've been alive. He started around 1982, so good on him. He does have some television roles that are kind of memorable. So 1983 to 85, he was on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as Keith the Handyman for 9 episodes. He was the voice of several people in the animated classic Gargoyles. Shout out to anybody that used to watch Gargoyles and Batman the Animated Series, all that stuff. And then 1997-99, he was the voice of Spawn in Todd McFarlane's Spawn. As I mentioned before, 1998, he was Apollo, the voice in Hercules. He's been on numerous Robot Chicken episodes. But one thing I noticed here, he is also very big in the documentary world, and 2 of them that jumped out at me, we'll get to his bigger ones here in just a second, but he has here listed that he was the narrator on the WWE special, The True Story of WrestleMania, and then also on WWE WrestleMania 28, which I found interesting. I've seen both of those documentaries at some point or another. I did not place Keith David as the narrator, which is interesting because usually they have one of the more seasoned wrestling vets or the movie phone guy do those, but I'll definitely have to go back and watch those again. And then he was the voice of Sullivar in the Flash TV series on CW. So had to throw that in there. That's one of my son Robbie's favorite shows. He does not know who Keith David is, but I'm sure if I said the voice of Solivar, he'd be like, oh yeah, that guy. I mentioned that he is very much into the voice acting part of his career, and rightfully so. You know, as you see him in his roles, he has a very distinct low voice that is perfect for voice acting. But I found that he is actually an Emmy Award nominee and an Emmy Award winner for his voice acting. He was a nominee in 2001's Jazz, and he was a winner for Outstanding Voiceover Performance in 2004 for The Unforgivable Blackness, and in 2008 for Necessary War, which is an episode of The War. And then also, just as recently as 2016, he won another Emmy, this time for Outstanding Narrator for the Jackie Robinson documentary. A literal shit ton of video games and animated superhero shows. So Halo, Saints Row, as I mentioned, the Spawn series. He's in quite a few of the Avengers and DC and Marvel animated shows. He's probably a voice in one of those if you keep your ear out. So definitely still very much a working man, has been very busy with his career. Props to him, well deserved, because as I said, he's an awesome actor. Every movie I've seen him in, I can identify a part. So in this movie, it's the how you spell that, and just, you know, puffing on his pipe and just out of the side of his mouth correctly. It's just awesome. As I said, in Barbershop, you know, it's ingrained in my memory. It's one of those movies that Jess was on a kick watching every night. But his line of, "The money is yours, the barbershop is mine." Love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah, definitely check him out. But one Mr. Keith David, Emmy Award-winning Keith David. This has been Put My Damn Name on the Board.
Add my name to the list.
Attaboy!
And we're back. We're taking a look today at Chapter 16, Clay Cantrell. We start with a shot of Herod and Cantrell standing next to each other, and they're both smoking. Herod has a cigar, and Cantrell is smoking his pipe. And we see outside the window that it's definitely raining. And coming from Arizona now, and being through several years out here, I have to wonder why, with all the rain during monsoon season, this is obviously monsoon season because that's the only time around here that it's raining as often as this movie shows. Why does he have the tournament during the 2 months that you'd have weather issues and delays and all that? Like, he could literally have it 10 months out of the year and be perfectly fine. But the 2 or so months of monsoon season, the weather sucks. Like, you'll have just torrential downpours for like 15 minutes. It'll rain 6-7 inches of rain and then be fine for a few hours. But like, that can pop up and happen anytime within an hour. So like, why not just do it in September? You know, what's the, is there a sentimental reason? Is it to celebrate the time that he took over the town? We don't really get any dig in to why the tournament's happening when it does. Now, I know that the reason that the movie, the makers of the movie have it during this time would be for the dramatic effect. So they get the natural windy conditions when we had Sharon Stone walking through the crowd. We have the effects of the rain for an upcoming scene, spoilers. We get to have the beautiful shots of the Arizona skyline with the rain clouds in it, which, you know, it's a beautiful skyline always, but it's usually just pure blue and then the sun sitting there. There's not that scenic quality to it. So from a movie making perspective, I understand why they're doing it when they do it, but I just don't understand within the film, storyline wise, why this would be the timeline that Herod chooses to do the tournament. I just don't get it. It is a beautiful looking shot of the two standing there because both men are respectfully dressed in a shirt and vest, very businessman like. And it just harkens back to a previous time where, men wore suits and hats and ladies wore dresses. I'm not saying that we need to go back to that, but it is interesting to see two gentlemen dressed like this that are both hired killers, essentially. And we'll see if that ends up playing against each other. But yeah, so they're very businessman-like, and I did find it very fitting because out of our contestants, these two probably are the closest in the group of contestants that you would consider themselves actually professionals or gentlemen, to have a bit of not hierarchy, but a bit of majesty to them, a bit of social standing in regards to both of them. Cantrell is rightfully curious as to why Herod asked him over. So we know now that this is obviously, given this and what we've seen in previous chapters, like the dinner scene, that this is obviously in Cantrell's house that they're currently standing in. Herod would like to know who hired Cantrell to come to the contest and face him, and this gets a hearty chuckle out of Cantrell. It's just a nice little touch. They both mosey over to a couple of chairs, and we get to see outside of the set of windows that is the downpouring of rain. And obviously, like I said, this tells me that they are in fact in Arizona, that for it to have rained so many times in this movie, that it has to be monsoon season, as I previously mentioned. We don't really get rain that often, except for a brief time from the beginning of July to the end of August. And it can potentially pour buckets for like 3 straight weeks, and just enough to make me have to mow the damn grass a couple times. As I'm recording this, I'm actually looking out my window and seeing the grass start to grow and dreading having to mow it. And then like magic, poof, grass disappears and everything's brown and dirt for the other 10 months out of the year. So again, why? Why are we doing this when we're doing this? But anyways, Cantrell feigns ignorance, proclaiming that he's just a gentleman gunfighter looking for the competition. And obviously Herod doesn't buy into it. And he tells him of his surety that Ace Hanlon was the hired hand, but he just ended up being a bit of a joke, and that he can tell that Cantrell's the real deal. It's nice to see another instance of two professionals recognizing each other's abilities, and I believe the kids nowadays, they refer that to what is it, game recognizing game. I could be wrong. I'm an old dad now. Cantrell refuses to give up the identity of his client, and he asks if Herod and he have business to discuss. Herod just takes a hit off of his cigar, and he says that as soon as the rain lets up, he's going to make an example of Cantrell, which is met with another hearty laugh. And it's hard to tell whether there's genuine mirth to that. Like, does he find it humorous that Herod thinks that he can beat him? Or is it all just a professional's ploy to sow doubt in his opponent, that I just told you I'm going to kill you and you laughed in my face? Does that cause some doubt with Herod? We'll see. We fade away to the sun peeking out of the rain clouds, and it's just another stunning sky view. This is what I was talking about. Like, you only get to see this during monsoon season, and it's absolutely breathtaking. We hear Leo telling a story as it dissolves into him standing on the porch steps of Herod's, and he's impressing a few local ladies and Ratsy with the story of killing someone named Flatnose Freddy. And if you're wondering where you can reach Freddy, his address where he resides is supposedly 6 feet under Redemption, Arizona. I'm assuming it's in Redemption. Herod comes out and he begins to descend the stairs, and he tells the kid to withdraw from the contest, that he had proved his point and things were over now. And I'm not sure what the point would have been then, because if the things that Leo had said throughout the movie are true, he's already a pretty well-established outlaw and gunfighter. Is Herod ignorant to the fact of why Leo is truly in this? Does he not get Leo's main drive for this? We'll find out. When Leo tests him, Gene Hackman pulls him aside and puts him in his place, and he lets him know that he's not sick, he's not old, nor half the man that he is, and that he's not going to stare at him like he currently is doing. And this gets Leo to avert his eyes, and I love this piece. It's the closest thing to an actual father-son conversation that the two have in the movie, and it's played very well of Herod not just being the big bully. He's telling Leo these things as if to chastise him and to truly teach him a lesson. Not in the beat him up sense, you're not going out and grabbing a switch or beating him, but it's one that you would actually have with a child that's stretching their wings a little bit and maybe just overstepping a bit. Sometimes you do have to, and you have to use your daddy voice. This is my daddy voice, to kind of still put them in their place, but not completely crush their will. He pushes the kid aside, and he continues to walk to the center of the street, and we see down the street that Cantrell is actually waiting, and the crowd is beginning to gather. So we're getting close to showtime between these two. Pat Hingle announces the beginning of round 2, and that there's going to be 4 fights today, weather permitting, obviously. When he states that the winner is the one left standing, he's immediately corrected by Herod that it's the one left alive. And this news doesn't get a reaction out of Spotted Horse or the lady, as we see them standing in the background over Hingle's shoulder. But Court begins to walk towards him, and Hingle contemplates what that means, and with guilt on his face, he makes the announcement that it's to the death from here on out. And Court, maybe rightfully so, calls shenanigans on Herod for changing the rules in the middle of the game. And Herod asks if Cantrell has a problem with that, to which he answers that he was planning on killing Herod anyways. And we close our scene with Herod hearing that and giving a cute little huh, as if to say, well, I'll be. It's just a nice little bit. It goes along the lines with Cantrell's little chuckle earlier. I want to point out that this is a nice little story piece of changing the tournament midway to make the stakes a little bit higher. We see this in almost every martial arts movie that there's a tournament in. I think of a Mortal Kombat where everybody's there to fight, and then all of a sudden they kill a few random people, and you're like, oh crap, I could die in this. Or even something as simple as Bloodsport, which wasn't necessarily a raising of the stakes to where people had to start dying now, but it was just a competition between martial artists beating each other. And yeah, there were injuries, there was stuff like that, but it wasn't until Chun-Li killed the guy that, we're reminded that there can be some big stakes here. And if somebody doesn't have the sense of morality or doesn't have a value placed on life that they should, it becomes a much, much more dangerous game. So interesting to see how that works with the remaining contestants, specifically the lady in Court, who, as we know, aren't really into the killing business. But who will survive now that we're getting deadlier? We'll find out next week when we come back for Chapter 17. But until then, folks, if you haven't already, please check us out on our social media. We are Support Your Local Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything like that, please hit me up via email at SUPP, that's SUPP, yourlocalpodcast@gmail.com. Rate and review us on whatever podcatcher you're currently listening to us on. That's what helps us the greatest. It's absolutely free, but those 5-star reviews are what move us up in the rankings and get us into more and more ear holes every week. But until we meet again, folks, I love you. I appreciate your time. And as always, support your local podcast.